Welcome back to the Explainer. If you're looking to keep your development workflow running as smoothly and securely as possible, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're breaking down the Claude Code 2.1.195 maintenance release. It's being called the Polish and Protect update, and we're going to get you totally up to speed on what it actually means for your daily coding environment. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, an action required on hook matchers. Second, a new feature for mouse clicks. Third, voice and plugin bug fixes. Fourth, background agent reliability. And finally, UI polish and resources. So here's the bottom line up front for version 2.1.195. Yes, it does an absolutely incredible job patching bugs and smoothing out your overall developer experience, but, and this is a big but, it fundamentally changes how hook matchers work under the hood. If you ignore this single configuration change, some of your current setups and custom workflows, they could quietly break without you even realizing it right away.
Starting off with Section 1, Action Required on Hook Matchers.
As developers, we all know there's literally nothing worse than a silent failure in our tooling, right? When things just stop working in the background and don't even throw an error code for us to debug. Which brings us to a highly relevant question for this update. Why might your hooks silently stop matching after you upgrade? Well, it all boils down to how you've named things. If you rely on hooks with hyphenated identifiers, like, say, code reviewer, version 2.1.195 completely changes the rules of engagement. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact issue. Previously, a hook matcher like code reviewer would accidentally fire on literally any identifier that simply contained that string. That same overly broad matching affected MCP server names, like MCP_Brave search. Now, the new requirement demands explicit exact pattern matching. If you actually want to match all tools from a hyphenated MCP server now, you gotta write the pattern explicitly. You'd use a wildcard syntax, something like MCP_Brave search _dot*. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is this. Without making this tiny config update, your hyphenated MCP server hooks will silently stop matching entirely. Moving right along to Section 2, our new feature for mouse clicks. Okay, let's all take a collective breath of relief here. We're past the critical config warning, and now we actually get to look at a brand new quality of life feature to customize your terminal workspace. This release drops a super helpful new environment variable called Claude Code Disable Mouse Clicks. When you set this, it completely turns off mouse click, drag, and hover handling whenever Claude Code is running in full screen mode. Why does that matter to you? Well, sometimes specific terminal emulators just conflict heavily with how Claude Code tries to capture mouse events. This variable solves those frustrating little conflicts instantly. And the best part? Wheel scrolling will still conveniently work, so you're not losing the ability to easily scroll through your terminal history.
All right, on to Section 3, Voice and Plugin Bug Fixes.
Let's look at how these rapid-fire under-the-hood patches really step up your daily interactions. First up, voice dictation. If you use voice commands, these fixes are fantastic. On macOS, there was this really annoying bug where, in long-running sessions, if your system's default audio input changed, like, say, you unplugged a headset, Claude Code would just start capturing pure silence. That is finally fixed. Next up, auto-submit for spaceless scripts. Languages like Japanese, Chinese, and Thai don't use spaces between words, so the old auto-submit logic was basically lost. It didn't know when to fire. But now, it finally understands and works correctly for those languages. And lastly, for our Linux users, if you have SOX installed but no audio capture device, you aren't going to get some confusing generic error anymore. Instead, you get a highly specific, no microphone found message. Small details, sure, but it makes diagnosing your setup so much faster. We've also got two extremely valuable plugin fixes. First, a pretty major security gap has been closed. Before this update, external plugins activated only through a project's .claudesettings.json file were actually skipping the install consent prompt on certain loader paths. That's a highly sensitive security gap, and it's now firmly shut. Consent prompts are strictly enforced across the board. Second, the /plugin enable or disable command used to fail if a plugin's internal name in its plugin.json file didn't perfectly match its marketplace name. That command mismatch bug, entirely resolved, so you can finally manage your plugins without the headache.
Next up is Section 4, Background Agent Reliability. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how clearly these core stability upgrades map out. We're shifting our focus deep into the background agent infrastructure, an area where silent crashes used to really drag down productivity. In older versions, jobs written by a newer version of Claude Code were literally just disappearing. That's actual data loss. This new release prevents that entirely. Your data integrity is protected. Then there was the notorious UI freeze. Reopening a crashed background task used to leave you staring at a blank screen for up to 5 painful seconds. Now you get instant restart visibility. Finally, if a control socket failed to start, background agent daemons could end up running but completely unreachable, which effectively blocked you from restarting them. Those control socket failures are fixed, meaning your background agents are finally as robust as you actually need them to be.
And our final section, number 5, UI polish and resources. You know, getting the background infrastructure right is really only half the battle. The visual interface needs to effortlessly support your workflow too, and the terminal interface itself just got a whole lot smarter. If you run the Claude Agents command, the completed jobs list now intelligently expands to fill whatever available vertical space you have, letting you see way more data at a single glance. On the flip side, if you're working on a really short terminal window, the header automatically compacts itself so your live sessions remain fully visible. And if you rely on remote sessions, say goodbye to that silent, anxiety-inducing wait while their container spins up. Remote Session Startup now features a super helpful provisioning checklist, giving you total visibility into exactly what's happening while the container comes online. Of course, an evolving tool this powerful has a massive surface area to explore. As our source material helpfully reminds us, for the full Claude Code manual and plain English breakdowns of every release, visit claudemaster.net. I highly encourage you to go ahead and bookmark that site. It's an incredible resource to continue expanding your expertise.
So, we've covered the bug fixes, the essential UI polish, and most importantly, that critical configuration change, which leaves me with one final urgent question for you today. Is your terminal configured for 2.1.195? Please don't let your custom hooks silently break in the background. Take just a few minutes right now to check your hyphenated identifiers and explicitly update them to use exact pattern matches. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay focused out there, and as always, happy coding.